If you've had a break in employment or switched jobs recently, don't worry, it doesn't automatically knock you out of FHA approval. Today, I'm breaking down Kentucky's FHA job gap rules in a simple, straightforward way so you know exactly where you stand before you apply. Welcome. If you're considering an FHA loan, understanding the 2-year employment rule is crucial. We're diving deep into what FHA truly looks for. Let's start with the basics of the FHA's 2-year employment requirement and the timeline they assess. FHA needs to review your employment history spanning a full 24 months, starting from today's current employment. Crucially, FHA focuses on overall employment stability over these 24 months. It's not about staying with one employer, but demonstrating a reliable work history. Now let's address one of the biggest concerns for many applicants: employment gaps. FHA has a specific rule regarding gaps longer than 6 months. The 6-month rule applies when you have an employment gap that lasts for 6 months or longer. This is the timeline that triggers special conditions for qualification. You can still qualify even with a long gap if you meet key criteria. You must be back to work for at least 6 months, have a stable current job, and demonstrate a 2-year history before the gap. FHA understands that life happens. There are several acceptable and common reasons for employment gaps. Whether it's job loss, medical issues, family leave, or even pursuing further education, FHA is prepared to accept these explanations, provided they are documented. Let's tackle some common myths about the FHA employment rule and replace them with the reality. Myth number 1. You need 2 years with the same employer. Reality. FHA requires a 2-year work history from any employers. And no, any gap doesn't automatically disqualify you. To illustrate, let's look at a real-world example of how FHA views a borrower's employment history. How FHA evaluates job gaps longer than 6 months. A job gap lasting 6 months or longer triggers additional FHA conditions, but it does not kill an approval. FHA allows your income to be used for qualifying as long as you have been back to work for at least 6 months in your current job or line of work, and you can show a stable 2-year work history prior to the gap. A lot of Kentucky homebuyers get discouraged because they've heard the wrong information about FHA job requirements. So let's clear up some of the biggest myths and look at what FHA really says. First myth: you need 2 years with the same employer. That's not true. FHA only needs a 2-year work history, and that can come from different jobs. Second myth: any job gap disqualifies you. Job gaps are allowed as long as they're documented, and you're back to stable work. Another myth: you can't change jobs. In reality, job changes are normal. FHA understands people move to better roles, higher pay, or different companies. The next myth is that only full-time work counts. FHA will use part-time, seasonal, overtime, and variable income if you can show a reliable history. And finally, some people think FHA requires a perfect employment record. Not even close. FHA is built for real-world buyers, people with life events, transitions, and changing careers. Now that we've cleared up the myths, let's walk through a simple readiness checklist I use with Kentucky FHA borrowers. This helps you know exactly what you need before applying, and it takes a lot of stress out of the process. First, documentation. FHA wants written explanations for any employment gap, even short ones. Nothing complicated, just a brief statement covering what happened and that the issue has been resolved. Next is stability proof. We need to show you're currently in a stable job. Recent pay stubs and a verification of employment usually take care of this. Then we look at the 6-month rule. If you had a gap lasting 6 months or more, FHA wants to see that you've been back to work for at least 6 months before we use your income. Fourth, history. We need a solid 2-year work history before any major gap. This can include past jobs, school, or military service. Fifth, supporting documents. Have your pay stubs, W-2s, offer letters, and verification letters ready. The cleaner your paperwork, the smoother underwriting goes. And finally, income calculation. For anyone with variable, part-time, or seasonal income, FHA uses a 24-month average. Having that documented up front makes the approval process much faster. If you're thinking about buying a home in Kentucky and you've had job changes or employment gaps, don't let that stop you. FHA is flexible, and most borrowers are surprised to learn they still qualify. So if you're ready to take the next step, reach out anytime. Call or text me at 502-905-3708, and I'll help you get pre-approved and moving confidently toward your new home.